1845, Muscatine, Iowa. Despite some of the strictest black codes in the North, Iowa is a free state. However, on occasion, enslaved people would appear, with the permission of their masters, to work and, theoretically, save up to buy their freedom. One such man living in Muscatine was named Jim White. He was given permission to work in Muscatine by his master. But when his master sent for him, he refused to come. He wanted to live in freedom. However, Jim White's master was not going to let go of his slaves so easily. He sent slave-catching agents to Muscatine to kidnap White and re-enslave him. Jim White knew the agents were coming for him, and he took shelter in the house of a local conductor on the Underground Railroad. When the agents came to town, Jim White was in hiding. After getting to know the town, these agents thought that the conductor who was hiding Jim White was Alexander Clark, the only prominent black businessman in town. The agents came up with a plan to re-enslave Jim White. They showed up at Clark's house on Chestnut Street, home of the wealthiest citizens of Muscatine, and told him that they were abolitionists. They'd heard about Jim White's plight, and they wanted to help. Their plan, the agents told Clark, was that they would help smuggle Jim White to Chicago, but they couldn't do it alone. They needed Clark's help. All Alexander Clark needed to do was row Jim across the Mississippi that night. They would meet Clark and White on the other side and take White to freedom. Alexander Clark agreed to their plan and shut the door. That night, past midnight, Alexander Clark brought Jim White out in a little boat on the Mississippi. On the other side of the river, the slave catchers saw the boat sailing towards them. The boat continued downstream and disappeared into the night. The slave catchers, despite searching, could not find Clark, White, or the boat. They thought they could trick Clark, but Clark had tricked them. He and Jim White likely hid on a small island in the Mississippi until the agents had disappeared, and then sailed back to Muscatine. After the agents returned empty-handed, Jim White's master gave up searching. Jim White returned to Muscatine and lived the rest of his life as a free man. This story had become local legend by the time a young writer came to town to work for the Muscatine Journal, which his brother partially owned. The story inspired the writer, and years later, he would take it as partial inspiration for one of his books. An enslaved man named Jim, along with a little boy running from his abusive father, in search of freedom and adventure down the Mississippi River. The writer's name was Samuel Clemens. The book was The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.